Post that shit. There we go. Okay. Again, bad habit of not being on time to my own stream, and you know, I need to fix that. I really need to fix that. I gotta exercise the grit to well, error. Thank you. Exercise the grit to do my shit at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Either way. Hello, Gotron. Welcome back. I have made the chat a little bit smaller, and I adjusted the gradient. I also adjusted the size of my webcam a tiny bit. I added back the timer, and I actually added another filter on my microphone. I was screwing around with the settings. And I noticed in some of the recordings that I did, some of the videos that went up on YouTube, I started to feel like there were certain ranges of my voice where I would talk a little quietly and the mic had trouble picking it up. So what I did was I added I think it's called an upward compressor. Yeah. And so now my voice should always be audible in the range where it's like decent volume. And it was quite the process, too. I had to figure out how the fucking order of operations of these filters worked and stuff. And of course, there is news, as there always is. They say no news is good news, but there's been a lot of news. Reacting to median voters. Yeah, median voter syndrome strikes again. Sometimes I try to stay away from that stuff because it doesn't tell me anything I didn't already know. But sometimes it's actually, like, reassuring to know, like, oh, yeah, if you are a liberal or a leftist, it just means you're a good person and right about everything, and you vote based on that instinct, and you want good things for the world, and you like help your fellow individual, and you care about your community. And if you're a conservative, you're like trying to do 5D chat. Yeah, it felt like the Virgin versus Giga Chat meme. If you're a conservative or like a weirdo centrist type, you're literally just trying to do 5D chess in your head to justify why you voted for death camps. Like, that's literally it. You know? You can hear the median voter explain their intentions and their motivations for voting for either Donald Trump and the Republicans or not for them. And it'll always be like, yeah, I supported him, like, it's so nonsensical, not even generative AI can understand it. Yeah, that's true. They couldn't invent something incoherent enough to capture the tendencies of the median voter, because it actually takes a very, very high degree of intelligence to be that incoherent. And when I say high degree of intelligence, I mean just that, like, it takes a very human degree of intelligence and sentience to be that incoherent about stuff, to have that kind of group identity that literally dictates what reality is based on certain social cues. You know? It's too selective, basically. Like, you ask somebody like an independent or somebody who voted for Trump, who supports Trump, and they'll say, like, yeah, you know, I support him, I think his policies are good. They will fail to list any of his policies. They'll say, like, I don't necessarily agree with the tariffs, but I can see an angle for it. You know, I think that, you know, the country did well in his first term, and most of the things he's done this time have been good, but I don't agree with, and then they proceed to list everything that he's ever done. You know? And they're like, but I still support him, and I think he's done good things. It's like, motherfucker. You are not immune to propaganda. You know? And take note as well. Sometimes in these interviews, you will hear people say, oh, you know, I saw such and such. I saw such and such happening in this country. Whenever they say, I saw this happening, no, they fucking didn't. They saw whatever the propaganda told them to see. These are people who watch, like, Joe Rogan, listen to AM radio, and watch Fox News. You know? So they heard from one of those three sources that insert thing here was happening that doesn't really exist, right? But then they sort of try to launder that and pass themselves off as a free thinker, even though they're just a bottom that wants to be told what to do. And they have to, you know, market themselves as an all-American free thinker. So they say, I saw, or I heard, or like, I've seen such and such. No, you fucking didn't. But again, you know, in addition to it being frustrated that all those people are like that, it is also reassuring to know that, like, the other end of the political spectrum there is just people who live in the objective reality of you know, material facts and conditions and etc. And that want good things and support good things and oppose bad things, you know. Making fun of conservatives based on maybe pure luck. Well, here's the thing, right? AI will never, like, completely, to the extent that AI generates text and messaging, it will never completely align with conservatives unless it is given very specific direction to ignore facts, right? To the extent that an AI has a data set, it has to rely on that data set. And if your data set consists of real things, you know, it is a very inefficient method of finding facts in a data set. But if you compose that data set entirely of facts that are reflective of the real world, an AI will always align more with left-leaning political positions because reality has a left-leaning political bias, you know? Of course, it'll still get everything, like, descriptively wrong because it's a very spicy, like, making shit up machine. But it has to be composed of, like, unless you fill it with specifically conspiracy facts and do not include facts that are reflective of the real world, then, you know, it's not going to be a right-wing conspiracy bot, you know? It actually, that's what I mean when I say it takes a very, very large level of programming, social conditioning, and ifs, ands, and buts to make a Nazi chatbot. You know, it's a very difficult thing to do because the identities, the political identities of being a Nazi, being a conservative, being on the far right are so contingent on antisocial social cues, vice signaling. You have to specifically code vice signaling into an AI to make it a Nazi. You know? Because an AI doesn't know what it's doing. All it does is, like, generate a kind of babble based on data that it's given. Anyways. Yeah, that was originally about the median voter, and it became about how even AI is incapable of capturing how stupid the median voter is because you legitimately have to be pretty smart in order to be that dumb. Does that make sense? There are certain kinds of dumb that are so specific and selective that you have to be really intelligent to reach that point of stupidity. You know? Like, in order to be more stupid than something that is not sentient, you have to know how to be that stupid. Yeah. And an AI doesn't know how to be that stupid. It's pretty stupid because it is, you know, just fucking picks shit out of a hat. But it's not that stupid because it's not consciously aware of the technique and methods required to reach that level of stupidity and self inconsistency and dishonesty. You know. You see Bear saying the R word? Yeah. But this was not supposed to be wholly like that, like entirely that. This was actually, as much as I am an anti-electoralist, I'm not a fan of pure electoralism. I do love me a good election because it's easy and fun coverage and discussion topics. All right, we love our elections. We love our fucking numbers and percent of which party won how many seats or percentages of the vote and whatever the fuck, right? That shit is fun. You know, I just come at it with the awareness that like that is not enough to advance the station of the working class. Thank you. I'm a good little Luxembourgist. You know. Oh, blue shell in second. Don't mind if I do. There's actually a couple that I could cover this time, and I will start, I think, with the one that happened first. I think I'll start with the local elections that occurred in the UK, then I will move on to the Australian federal elections, once this race is done, because I'm depending largely on a Wikipedia article to cover those. And it's probably a good idea to like put off the coverage of the Australian elections, because those actually aren't done yet. There's about 80-ish% of the... Well, I'm sure all the votes are actually in by this point, but a good number of the votes actually have still yet to be counted. So let's start with the local council elections in the UK, particularly England. Here, let's... There we go. Some people in my Discord were talking about this too. Next race. Good news or bad news? Well, in this case, it's bad news, but I mean, there's analysis to be found all the same. All right. United Kingdom local elections for the year 2025. The 2025 UK local elections were held on the 1st of May 2025 for 1,641 council seats across 24 local authorities. All seats on 14 county councils and 8 unitary authorities in England were up for election. They were the first local elections to follow the 2024 general election. Most of these seats were last contested in the 2021 local elections. So Scotland and Northern Ireland, and I think Wales, did not have local elections. This was just England. And I guess Cornwall, if you count that as a separate part. But if you include that in England, right? There were also 6 mayoral elections. All right, very good. So, the elections were described as they were, a sweeping victory for the Reform Party of the United Kingdom. Reform gained a lot of seats here. I think from the numbers, the numbers actually varied a little bit as the count was going on, as is the case for like different methods of tallying up the exit polls. The initial number that I heard was that the Tories lost 599 seats and Reform gained 599 seats. Although that doesn't exactly transpose one-to-one, but it creates the general picture that I think is pretty correct there. Labor also lost seats, while the Greens and the Liberal Democrats gained some seats. The final numbers, it seems, are, let's see. Seats, okay, net change. Reform UK gained 677 seats, according to Wikipedia. Now that the electoral counts are all said and done in the UK, the Reform Party gained 677 seats in the local council elections, local elections across England, just England. Oh man, this number is actually almost perfect as well. The Conservatives lost 676 seats at the local level in these England elections. Meanwhile, the Liberal Democrats gained 163 council seats. And I'll have to scroll down here, but Labour also lost a significant number of seats in this election. The two biggest parties, or formerly biggest parties, lost a lot of ground. How is this bad news? I'll explain in a moment, but the far-right party gaining ground is usually bad news, Reform UK becoming the new big party is bad. Because they're Nazis and the Conservatives are, slightly less Nazi. That's pretty bad. Yeah, Labour lost 186 seats. And the Green Party gained 45 seats. So it seems like there is... I don't know if this is going to hold, but it seems like there's going to be a realignment towards some sort of Liberal Democrat Green bloc. Or maybe Liberal Democrats, Greens, and Labour versus Reform UK. And then the Conservatives, I feel like, are going to try to be a power broker or go kick rocks or otherwise fall in line with the Reform UK. Because the only reason that Reform UK won is because they were willing to lean harder into the conservative positions that the Tories already held. The anti-immigration, the anti-trans stuff, the fucking hatred of the working class. Seriously, to the extent that Reform UK even has an economic platform, it revolves around the stripping away of workplace benefits like work from home and sick leave. That's their platform. And then they also just fucking hate brown people and trans people. So that's how it was bad news, is that the Nazis gained a lot of ground. We don't typically shed any tears for establishment parties losing ground. Certainly not when it's the UK Labour and UK Conservative Party. But Reform taking their place is definitely not a good thing. Now, the reason that this happened, I explained a little bit. This was kind of foreseeable. The Conservatives in the national elections also lost ground to Reform UK in 2024. And I explained also a little bit that Reform UK are just willing to lean more into the xenophobic nationalism that the Conservatives want to go a little bit light-handed on. They want to be more civility-pilled, and Reform UK is less like that. Reform UK started as the UK Independence Party. And then they rebranded to the Brexit Party, and now they are Reform UK. This is the political party that brought you Brexit in 2016, and that is responsible for the post-2010 decline of the UK. Post-Brexit decline of the UK. That's these guys' fault. The Tories are responsible, the Tories and Labour are responsible for all the rest of the decline, but sure enough, Reform UK is complicit in that. Right? But they know to be louder, a lot louder, about the xenophobia stuff. They know to not talk as much about the austerity. They know to clothe that, if they do talk about it, in the language of hating brown people and how trans people are ruining the country, and to rid our nation of these degenerate influencers or whatever. We must cut them out of the social safety net, and by that we mean cut the social safety net for literally everybody. And again, it's the same story every single time. If there was a party that was proposing a counter-narrative to this, then they wouldn't necessarily be able to get away with this so readily. For example, if the Liberal Democrats stick to some of their guns that they have mentioned in their policy manifestos and stuff like that, rebuilding the welfare state and protecting the right for workers to organize, and more strictly regulating capital, that's not enough because, you know, social democracy, but it does provide at least something of an answer to reform and the Tories and the Labour Party, since Labour no longer represents Labour. Some people that say the borders, they probably never want to actually say what they mean because it will make them look bad. On the contrary, they're actually very willing to say what they mean there because there's no consequence for doing so. When they say border enforcement, everybody knows that they mean we want to deport brown people, and they have said as much on the news. The conservatives even screened for people who would prioritize that in picking cabinet ministers, and their voter base ate it up. That's the shit that they love. They don't love the austerity. They do love the racism. But that's just because the racism is the only narrative they've been offered. And I mean, people are genuinely pretty racist around the world, UK included. But, you know, there's one narrative there. I was talking with voters most. Oh, yeah, well, in this case, voters will eat that shit up. So. So yes, the feckless institutional decay of the Tories and the Labour Party gave way to a rise in populism that was more easily capitalized on by reactionaries because they are compatible with the interests of the owning class. And so as a result, each party being captured by the owning class started to lean more or less into the reactionary rhetoric, and the party that was most willing to lean into it eclipsed all the others. That's the Reform Party, you know? Because all three of these parties, Labour, Conservatives, and Reform, are all austerity nuts, you know? The only difference is how racist are they. Labour is like a little bit racist, Conservatives are pretty racist, and Reform UK is Hitler. So. At this point, I'm convinced if you're rich, you can get whatever you want. And there you go. That is an underlying, like, flaw in the capitalist system. That's why, you know, a lot of people are also, like, very willing to be radicalized to the left if there's a good narrative opportunity for it to happen, right? Because, yeah, a lot of people in the UK, and like, everywhere, as incoherent as they all, like, people have a pretty good intuitive understanding that the law doesn't mean a whole lot if you're rich, you know? Like, if you're rich, you can do whatever you want. Like, the inequality of the world round is growing. People who go to work every day and earn their living through a wage or a salary are getting fucked on a global scale. And wealth is accumulating at the top where it already was, you know? The reason that we're seeing the far-right populism emerge first is because that is more friendly to that wealth consolidation continuing. And there's a massive propaganda effort to direct people's attention away from that. In the UK, we're just seeing another example of that playing out. You know, fascists pretending to be the party of the everyman. You know, anti-Semitism as the stupid man's anti-capitalism. And so long as there's no real anti-capitalism to challenge it, there's you know, then they get to reach political power. The fact that liberals were surprised people would ever get mad at them for losing is a bit of proof. Yeah, there is definitely in this whole soup of factors that enable the far right to rise like this, there's definitely a lot of ideological failure on the part of liberalism, because when your ideology is the status quo, you're ill-poised to offer a narrative of change, because liberals don't want things to change, you know? And this is how liberalism becomes fascism as well, is that it retreats into itself. Whenever people start yelling that this shit is fucked, sir, Kowalski, analysis, shit's fucked, when people start screaming that, and they're like, give me my fucking money. I need my sick days. I need time off. Work is killing me. Liberals panic because it's literally not something they can account for in their worldview. There's literally like a black hole in the liberal worldview where all like labor organizing resides and where all like critiques of capitalism reside. It literally doesn't register to them that people could like take issue with the system. Liberal politicians, that is. And what, you know, when I say liberals and liberal ideology, this is an indictment of people who are consistent enough to like have some kind of underpinning belief system, you know. Reminds me of the one time the Green Arrow actor was anti-strike. That's fucking ironic. Like, dog, you're an actor, you're a worker, and you're playing Green Arrow. Literal Robin Hood character. Yeah. So I've basically like, I've kind of danced around it, but how do you address something like this? How do you address the far right ascending in this kind of way? How do you address like Reform UK getting almost 700 seats, the Labour Party continuing to move to the right, Conservatives no longer being relevant, and all of them hating trans people? Well, you do that with, I guess, Ed Davey in the interim, but really in the long term, you do that with socialism. You know, massive, like, broad-based coalition of labor organizing, of the rights of the marginalized, rights for migrants and trans people, and whoever the fuck else is in that tent, and political organizing groups that are capable of representing those interests, and that are hostile to private capital. You know, consolidation of wealth and consolidation of power go hand in hand. And guess what else goes in hand with the consolidation of power? The oppression of minorities and, you know, genocide, the slaughter of thousands, or even just the banal institutional decay that leads to thousands of people dying through, like, falling through the institutional cracks. You know? This is a socialism or barbarism moment. And the people in the UK have yet to be presented with socialism. But they have an abundance of barbarism. Ironic given the mannerisms of people from the UK, England particularly, but, you know, it is what it is. Oh my god, I clipped through the fence. I feel like society tries to hide the idea of socialism as hard as humanly possible. Yeah, that is the massive propaganda effort that I referred to. The media institutions around the world are owned privately for the most part. You know, hell, there's a lot of news institutions that are owned by like 2 or 3 different companies. And all those companies are owned by, like, a board of directors, or even just one guy, or, like, a collection of shareholders. And they all have capital, like, property interests. You know, they all want line to go up. And socialism means that for them, line does not go up. You know, their kind of line go up is the kind of line go up where you're like, oh, wow, look at these GDP numbers. Pay no attention to the fact that, like, tens of thousands of people in each of these states are living in, like, extreme poverty, you know? There has been, and continues to be, a concerted effort for any media institution out there to, like, completely discount socialism as even a remote possibility for the sake of the, like, the humming along of institutions as they currently exist, but also for the consolidation of wealth. That's it. Seriously, the decline of the Labor Party can be tracked one-to-one with its growing departure from the labor movement. It's not rocket science, but it is political science. One red shell. Alright, good. Oh, dang. Yeah, the liberal reaction to fascism is like, whatever, oh, this is a threat to democracy, I guess. And then the reaction to socialism is like, fucking kill it, arrest all of them, crack down on their protests, break some skulls, you know, all that shit. Oh, I thought for sure that would hit one of them. And that's why stuff like this happens. And, you know, because fascism emerges first. Both of these ideologies in a late-stage capitalist world are sort of emergent properties of decaying material conditions, decaying, like, conditions of life, conditions of work, whatever. People grow more and more disillusioned and desperate, and they want answers for their woes. They want an out for the fucking suffering that they experience on the regular. And both of those ideologies purport to give an answer to that. But, you know, because there's such a massive effort to suppress socialism, the other one, fascism, comes around first in the political discourse. You know? But when socialism comes around sometime after, it's going to be a lot harder for media institutions to quash it again. That's why the effort is so massive on the part of media outlets and anybody with the power of, like, manufacturing, consent, and narrative weaving to do that. You know, because it is a truly revolutionary ideology, and you can't put that back in the bottle once it's out in the open. In the Captain America and the Winter Soldier show, they're like, society has done worse. Means the anarchists are back, but yeah, that show was very towards the end, very, very lib coded, very, very much guilty of the, oh well, you may have had a point, but you took it like way too far or something syndrome that a lot of those shows end up being subject to. Captain America is 100% a liberal. It shows it in the movie. I think that Captain America is liberal. Steve Rogers' Captain America is a liberal in parentheses, at least not derogatory. Like, he's not a neo-lib. I kind of explained how that went in the... Oh, the new one? Yes. Sam Wilson's Captain America is the most lib that has ever lived in superhero movies, because his character, like, to the extent that he has had screen time as Captain America, the only thing he seems to want to emphasize is trust in the institutions. Which is ironic, considering it's, like, the first black Captain America, and they're all about trust in liberal institutions or some shit. In fact, part of me thinks that they may have done that because he was a black Captain America and they just wanted black people to, like, shut the fuck up about racism or something. I don't know. Look, we know that Hollywood executives are pretty fucking racist, but, you know. Yeah. Yeah, Steve Rogers have been like, fuck it, I'll do it my way. No, that was almost a really good Sandhawk, but hit the cactus. Ooh, okay. I almost got him with that. That was crazy. Remember the one scene where the person got arrested by the cops? He went to the person to say, trust the cops. Was that in the show? In the, like, Falcon and the Winter Soldier show? Movie. No, well, I haven't seen the movie then. So no, I don't. I think I remember you bringing it up, but I haven't seen that movie, and I have no intention to see that movie because it sounds like some garbage. All right, let me see. Yeah, any media that like dares to be left of center is like, executives are canceling this one. It's like the Trump administration just provided the excuse. Let me see. I don't think there's anything else for me to really say about the UK elections. Yeah. Now let's talk about the Australian elections. Now, this is me. I'm using Wikipedia for this, so the numbers will be accurate, but they will be behind. They will be a little bit behind. So the Australian federal elections are happening, and they are a similar sort of system to Canada and the UK, I believe, where it's like the federal elections are a sort of first past the post mishmash or something like that. You know, you vote for a party or like a party deputy and whatever, and whoever's the leader of the party that gets the most votes becomes the prime minister. And the two major contenders here are, excuse me, the Liberal National Coalition, which is the right-wing bloc, and the Labour Party, which is the left-wing bloc, comparatively speaking. From what I have heard, their Liberal Party is not as bad as their Labour Party is not as bad as like the UK Labour. Thankfully, but they're still not like amazing. So, seems pretty typical of a you know, a liberal sort of non-socialist Labour Party. In fact, somebody pointed this out to me the other day that Lenin actually talked about Australia specifically and their Labour Party. And Lenin, in his analysis of Australian politics, when it was very early on in its development, was like, yeah, they have a like similar to the UK, they have a non-socialist Labour Party. And that has certain implications as opposed to having a Labour Party that's more overtly socialist. Nice. When I was 5, everyone was like, racism is cringe. Or at the very least acted like it. Yeah, most people understand that racism is cringe. They have to learn that racism is based in red pill or some shit. Anyways, now that I've buried the lead for long enough, the Labour Party won 85 seats, and the Liberal National Coalition won 41. Which is a pretty resounding victory for the Labour Party in Australia. At least that is what is reflected in this Wikipedia article, which is only up to date as of May the 4th, 2:52 a.m. Local time. I don't know what that is, EST. Like United States Eastern Standard Time. But 71-ish% of the votes are reflected in this data from Wikipedia, and it looks like the Labour Party is projected to win a majority of the seats, which is good, I think. It is another example, I talked about this with Canada, of like the far right in America polarizing the world against the far right elsewhere. Because since the far right is so America-coded, they kind of have to be soft on Trump and on his administration when they do, like, tariffs and all that bullshit. And so people who are affected by those tariffs, by that economic policy and whatever in those countries are like, wait a minute, you fucking cowards. You know? We actually have national pride in this country. Or something. And we don't want to be, like, led around by the nose by the fucking American conservatives. So now we have actually a couple data points. We have actually three. We have 3 data points in high-profile elections to support the hypothesis that the far right in America, being hostile to the rest of the world, is polarizing the rest of the world against fascism. We have the German elections, where despite support from Elon Musk, the AfD only performed basically exactly as they were expected to. You know, they didn't get any popularity bump, and the left party actually started to climb in popularity. We have the Canadian election, where the Conservatives were projected to blow out the Liberal Party until Trudeau stepped down, and Trump did the tariffs and all that shit, and then the Liberal Party actually won in Canada, and now we actually have Australia, where a similar thing sort of happened, not to Canada per se, but you know, you have a more pro-Trump conservative bloc, and then you have a more anti-Trump and, you know, anti-American far-right labor liberal bloc. You know, and in all of these instances, the far right lost ground or kind of stagnated, and the left gained ground. Elon Musk must be literally he literally got depressed. They couldn't buy the elections for some reason. Damn. Imagine being so insecure that makes you depressed. Not just like, okay, we gotta find a different way to, you know, to convince them, right? Like, legitimately, nobody likes me. Like, yeah, no shit. I wonder why. It's the reason they don't have the guts to lie about him, like, oh, we're anti-Trump. Yeah, they kind of go soft on it, because at the end of the day, all the far-right parties, because America is a cultural exporter of far-right ideology, all the far-right parties in other countries in some ways resemble the far-right in America. You know? Like, you literally have... Okay, let me go back to the UK elections for a second. You literally had Nigel Farage, the leader of the Reform Party UK, using talking points about DEI specifically. You know? DEI is specific to the United States. It is a set of workplace practices meant to comply with the United States Civil Rights Act of 1964. You learn that in civics class, if you take civics class in this country, right? Anybody who... This is proof that, like, anybody who uses the term DEI is a shill for the American far right, and also just racist, because they don't have DEI in other countries, not by that name. They just want to, like, say the N-word or some other racial slur, but they use DEI over top of it because that's the, like, America-approved sort of coded language, extremely sloppily coded language for it. America keeps stealing everything. Well, yes, that's true. But in this case, it's something that other countries got from us. You know, it's kind of like the other way around. We like propagandized the business interests and the far right and like fascist ideology to many other countries. Some of them, granted, did not need us to tell them to be fascist in order to be fascist, of course, but it left an imprint nonetheless, you know? In fact, this was even true back in the 1920s and 30s. Hitler was inspired by a lot of American eugenicists. Oh no, I think that was my own banana. But, you know, the long and the short of it is that since the far right has no identity, clearly, outside of loving Trump and hating minorities, then it like, defeats for them, like this one in Australia, will continue to happen. You know? Insofar as opposition parties, you know, Labour parties, left-leaning parties, are able to provide any sort of response. And that's also partly why the UK is not following suit in kicking the butt of the far right, because they don't really have an alternative. They have the far right, and they have milquetoast liberals that are increasingly resembling the far right, and those liberals just kind of take up institutional space, and not a whole lot else. Have you heard about the countries that complain about black people even if there's not a black population there? Yes, I have heard of that. That's another big thing. In China, in Korea, and in, I think, Japan in some measure, the far right, there's like a community, or there's a political block of like far right incels that complain about black people like cucking them and having sex with their girlfriend or whatever, despite the fact that they don't have a girlfriend, and there are no black people in those countries, or like vanishingly few. That's how you know that a lot of fascism is just a cultural export of America. Like, they didn't even swap their own ethnic minority in for black people. You know, how obvious can you make it that like this is not a homegrown movement? That's evidence that this is clearly funded and sort of astroturf from the top down. Is that like the spread of this ideology? It maybe not as directly as like companies will astroturf shit in the United States, but like clearly the fascism that other countries have is largely a cultural export of America. That's why they're all talking about black people and DEI instead of like whatever ethnic minority is in their own country and like whatever programs they have that are bad, you know, like because you know, they get the language from us. I thought I'd get an item, but I suppose not. I also didn't get an item there. Nice. Ooh, I'll take that. Oh no! It ate my hop. My jump input, so I just kind of slid and spun out. Alright, I'm going to use this here. So I can get a box. There we go. I'm in first with a mushroom. Imagine being leftist in these countries and then like and then bro is not even happening or can't happen. Yeah, see, here's the thing, right? all the talking points that the far right uses, they're already not happening in the country where they're the most relevant. In America, where there is a black population and where there are a lot of trans people and there is a lot of immigration, right? All the shit that they say already isn't happening here. And then in a country like Korea, where they're not experiencing enough immigration to support the population and where there aren't black people, they still say the same fucking thing. And it's like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? Never mind the fact that black people aren't, like, doing the whole, like, cuckold shit. I mean, maybe they are, and it's all consensual and, like, whatever, right? Like, never mind the fact that, like, you're being schizophrenic in countries where these minority groups actually exist. These minority groups don't even exist in your country to be schizophrenic about them. Like, what is wrong with these people, dude? I mean, that's kind of a rhetorical question. We know what's wrong with them. It's a profound lack of interpersonal contact with other human beings brought on by a number of things. Poor decision-making, but mostly institutional decay and like, horrid work culture and you know, everything just being much more hostile to going out and making friends. But still, it's like, Jesus Christ, dude. Take your fucking medicine. I think the internet has made everyone America-pilled, where everything is America. Yeah, kind of. Because the internet was an American creation. The internet was created by the United States government. You know? It was originally a military-industrial complex project. The internet originated as a series of computer servers and like data banks connected in the Pentagon, like in the United States military, and it was created with public money. It was only after the internet became widespread that it began to be privatized, that private telecom companies popped up and started being the stewards of internet infrastructure, you know? It started out nationalized, and then it got privatized over time, and that tracks with it getting worse over time, too. You know? How does keyboard work in some different languages? That's a good question, but they aren't all QWERTY. For example, I have a French language keyboard on my computer as well, and the French language keyboard is actually AZERTY instead of QWERTY. That was a really good shock, but I didn't fall off. And in some countries, in I think China, Japan, and Korea, where they have like very calligraphic alphabets and stuff, I think the keyboards operate on like a simplified version of that alphabet, or something like that. At least I know that for sure that that's the case in Japan, that it operates with like a hiragana, katakana alphabet on the keyboard because there are fewer characters that way. But I imagine it would also be similar for that in China and Korea. In countries that use Cyrillic or phonetic alphabets, so like any European country or Russia or you know, and Russia and Greece and like Turkey and the Arab world, their keyboards would look pretty similar to like English keyboard, just with like the Arabic alphabet or the Cyrillic alphabet, or maybe characters in slightly different places. That's international keyboards for you. But a lot of places also use the English QWERTY, you know, ASDF keyboard, right? Because a lot of places, you know, because America has been on top for so long, and because the internet came of age when America was the global hegemon, a lot of places also have a significant English-speaking population, if only as a second or even third language, right? So they'll also use, for some communication stuff, they'll use English, and they'll use an English keyboard. So sometimes you see keyboards that actually have both English and non-English characters on them. So like, for each key, there would be the English letter and then the non-English letter that it corresponds to. You know, like in some on some Arabic language keyboards, you would have like ASDF and then Alif something. I forget which keys are in which positions, but yeah. Ow. Why'd you do that? I can make it. I'm so good. Give me a box. Thank you. You know what's funny? The tracks where you need mock bike the least are the ones that I find it's most difficult to drive on the mock bike, you know? Tracks with tight turns, that shit is easy, because you just get to, like, you kind of dominate those tracks. But then a track like this, where the turns are very wide, typically, it's kind of hard to avoid the fray. It's probably still easier than with the Flame Runner, because the Flame Runner actually has less control over over its turning than the mock bike does. But it's still not a it's not a lean feat, I guess. You know, I think it's because of your training. Maybe that's possible. All right, third place. Cool. What else I got? Oh yeah. Okay, this is a random thought of mine. Not so random. It pertains to socialism and politics and etc. And labor organizing. I think it should be illegal to, and this is how you know this is going to be a spicy take. It's a small thing, though. I think it should be illegal for employers to list wages hourly instead of monthly or weekly. And I can explain why I say that. In other countries, in France and the UK and Germany, to my knowledge, I've seen labor statistics from those countries on occasion. The wages are all listed monthly or weekly or whatever, right? And that makes it a lot easier for people to compare that wage to their monthly expenses, right? You get your electricity bills, your utility bills every month. You get rent every month. You pay your mortgage every month. So you can add that up to a monthly cost very easily. With wages, if it's a weekly wage, you can just multiply that by like 4, or you know, if it's a every other week thing, like every 2 weeks, then you can multiply it by 2. Or if it's a monthly wage, it's 1-to-1. But if it's hourly, not every job works the same amount of hours. There's a lot more math that you have to do for calculating how much an hourly wage translates to per month. Because if even in the easiest possible scenario where you're working 40 hours a week clean, no more, no less, you know, no overtime being factored into this, no like unpaid, unscheduled time off or whatever, you still have to multiply how many hours do you work in a month and then apply that to your wage, right? There's an additional level of abstraction that makes it harder to look at the number $15 per hour and be like, okay, well, what does that mean each month, right? Like, it's harder to make up that gap. And so a lot of people either won't be able to, or it just won't occur them to do it, you know? Or in other, in certain case scenarios, they will be able to calculate about how much, $15 an hour, or even, $10 an hour, however much nets them per month. But it'll be like, there will be enough room for, like, extra pay for overtime or whatever, that they'll, like, sort of be like, well, I could work more hours if I need to make up a shortfall, right? Does that make sense? What I'm trying to get at is that I do think that the hourly market, the marketing of wages as hourly as opposed to monthly, even if wages are calculated per hour on the back end, they should be displayed monthly, because otherwise it makes it much harder for people to understand what they're being paid in reality, you know? And I don't think that's by accident. So many things, once they get fixed, realities soon look so much better, beyond our comprehension. Yeah. Basically, what I think is that the reason that, and I'll do one more race so I can sort of flesh out my thoughts on this. The reason I think that wages are so frequently given to you hourly, or shown to you hourly, is so that companies can more easily hide how little they pay people. And so that people who are not getting paid very much have a harder time recognizing how little they get paid. If there is a bill passed to standardize this, because some places do list salaries annually, in which case you can divide by 12 to see how much you would need per month, or monthly, in which case it's 1-to-1 for monthly expenses. If you have that more direct comparison to monthly expenses, it is a lot easier for people to recognize, hey, wait a minute, this job doesn't pay enough, or this job pays actually a good amount. So, great. And that is an avenue by which people can form a sort of class consciousness. Legitimately, if people can openly recognize right in front of them, I'm not getting paid enough, then that frustrates people, and that leads people to a sentiment that is more hostile towards their employer, because employers can afford to pay people more than they do. They just need to make a profit. They need to pad that bottom line. They need to consider their shareholders and whatever else. Have you ever heard the term treating the disease, not the symptom? Yes, I'm aware of that. What I'm saying is that this, if you fixed that small thing, the reason I highlighted that it's so small is that you could get enough fiddly technocratic neolibs on board to potentially pass this, and they won't realize how hard they're making their own lives by generating basically more class consciousness in the workforce. It'll be just like like a little standardizing measure, a tweak around the margins, if you will. But this particular tweak around the margins is designed to more easily get the working class to realize their own plight, to use more LARPy terms, right? If you standardize that, then I guess the game kind of decided that I was done there. If you standardize that to monthly, all of a sudden $7.25 per hour becomes $800 per month for 40-hour work weeks. And people are going to see that, and it's going to hit them like a ton of bricks. And they're going to be like, whoa, I'm not getting paid shit for this. The federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. Republicans would ruin the next cycle and don't tell anyone about it. That is probably true, and that's why this is just like a kind of off-the-cuff thing, right? My hope was, like, in thinking of this, it's, like, small enough to sneak by most Democrats, for sure. It might even be small enough to sneak by most Republicans, Although they're so opposed to anything good happening that they'd probably just shoot it down out of principle anyway, so maybe you're right. But, if people see that, they'll probably more people will get mad. It'll be easier for people to see what there is to get mad at, if that makes sense. they went, I'm going to make sure that the government tells you your taxes. Yes, but they never run on that because they're all fucking in bed with the contractors and the corpos. And guess who are some of those contractors and corpos? Intuit, TurboTax, and fucking H&R Block. You know? But yes, if they ran on that, Democrat landslide. If they ran on like, hey, we're going to strengthen the IRS free filing system and we're going to tell you how much money you owe, like up front. We're going to simplify these tax forms even more. Basically, like, we already know how much you owe, so we'll just tell you that. And then you pay up and then no problem. You don't have to go through this whole fucking Byzantine process, you know? Because Republicans actually oppose that. And they would have to justify their opposition to that. But Democrats will never go on the attack because they're conditioned not to, both by liberal ideology and the sort of institutional capture that big corpos have. Yeah, it continually the opposite. Like there are two giant things that prevent Democrats from doing anything good. And number one is the fucking capture of the whole political apparatus by capital. And then number two is that Democrats fundamentally don't believe that anything needs to happen. You know, at an ideological level, they just believe that everything is fine the way it is. But yeah, it was just random, a small thought of mine. That like, cause I work a part-time job, you know, and I make about $400 a month. It's not bad for part-time, and I'm not working that many hours. You know, that's about how much I make per month, you know, and I kind of knew what I was signing up for. But a lot of people who work a part-time job, in air quotes part-time, between 30 and 40 hours, make a lot less than I do in an hourly sense, and only make about twice as much as I do on a monthly basis. You know, if Republicans ever disappeared, it would threaten. What? Oh, yeah. If the Republican Party disappeared, then that puts the Democrats in the hot seat, and the Democrats don't want to be in the hot seat, so they keep the Republicans around, not realizing that the Republicans are actually the ones keeping them around, or rather that the capital class is keeping both of them around. Yeah. I don't know. This was a shorter stream. It is a very convoluted circle. It's a very big network of relationships. Many of them fucking corrupt, quid pro quo, and politically incestuous, and you know, any other sort of word that you could come up with to describe capitalism, right? I am going to not rate anybody this time. This is a shorter stream. It is here, let me take a look at the weather. It is currently 81 degrees Fahrenheit outside, 82 degrees Fahrenheit, excuse me. And I do not have air conditioning in my room. Both my windows are open, so it's been 80 degrees this whole time. I'll see you guys later.